So I was watching this really interesting TED Talk this week, and it was about cave paintings, and it was about cave paintings in Europe, and this scientist that had researched them, and what she was interested, you know, I mean, we think of cave paintings and we think of like pictures of animals or people, or maybe like tallies that maybe were like tallies of a hunt or something, we don't know what. But this research was looking at the other pictures that were there too, and what she discovered, this is really interesting I think, is that over across Europe there were only 32 other symbols that went along with the cave paintings. Which means they had to actually mean something, right? Because to be that consistent, and that people knew what those meant. And so I was thinking about that, and this is back as far back as 40,000 years ago that these symbols started to show up. 40,000 years. And they weren't just in Europe, they spread as far, they see these same symbols all the way to Australia. Like, wow! So that, I mean, that's pretty amazing. But somebody at some point had to have the imagination to make the first mark and then share it, and everybody had to like get on board and understand what that meant together to create that experience. And this is before, you know, we think of cuneiform as being the first written language. Well, what if this was actually the first written language? Because this is before that. That's amazing. But somebody had to have the idea to try it, to do that, right? So the imagination is an amazing thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the imagination and the vision and how we can use that in one's life. Now, in the Hebrew scriptures, there's a story about Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah was greatly distressed that the walls of Jerusalem had fallen. And he did a lot of praying about what was his to do about this situation. And he was a servant to a king of a nearby nation, and so the king noticed that he seemed to be upset and said, "Hey, what's going on?" Of course, he didn't say it in those words because that was my words. Anyway, so Nehemiah told him that he wanted to go and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. This was something he felt really called to do, and so the king gave him permission to go, and even gave him some documents and stuff that would help him get what he needed to get done. So Nehemiah went to Jerusalem, and he rallied all the Jews and all the people to help, and each family built a portion of the wall, which is pretty neat too, that there was all this teamwork. And working together, they achieved their goal. So if we're looking deeper at the story, like what does the story tell us? Well, what do we do if something stokes our passion, right? It can be whether it's distressing, like the falls of the wall, and he felt that Jerusalem needed to have a new wall, or it could be something you're really excited about. It could be either one. So if we take our time to clear our minds and open up to a deeper wisdom of what's mine to do around the topic, we will have a clearer direction instead of kind of like boing, 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 off. You know, we've probably all done that. When we get excited about something, we go for it. Sometimes it's good to stop and get a clear vision of where we're trying to go. And then once we have that clear direction, we need to take steps. Just as Nehemiah headed off to Jerusalem, he gathered support, dealt with adversaries and trouble. I mean, it wasn't like all wine and roses when he got there. He had to deal with some stuff. But he didn't focus or lose his focus. He didn't focus on the things that weren't working, and he didn't lose his focus on what needed to happen. And neither did the other people that he had working with him. He continued to use his imagination to see his goal and know that it could happen, because this was the vision that he knew was his to do. And he did not let anything that was happening that wasn't working drop him into worry and despair. So imagination is one of the 12 powers. And the 12 powers are the inherent abilities that we all have, and we may be more or less skilled in using. And the definition of imagination from Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, is the faculty of mind that images and forms, the power to shape and form thought. With our imagination, we lay hold of ideas and clothe them with substance. I like that. We lay hold of ideas and clothe them with substance. So we get an idea and then we make it real. So what does a developed or a not so developed faculty of imagination look like? For instance, if you had an underdeveloped imagination, you might, for instance, not be able to see what an empty room would look like with your furniture and you paint color on the walls. You wouldn't be able to put it all together. Someone who has an overdeveloped faculty of imagination may find themselves worrying obsessively about things where they may have created a world that is dangerous and filled with germs and etc., and may even be debilitated by that if they're using that power to excess. Using the imagination well is taking an idea, like rearranging a room, and seeing how it will come together. So not only did I see the furniture when I was visioning how we'd use this space, but I stayed curious about how the flow of people might work and how we could not have folks being blinded by the sun, which is not a problem today, but has been a problem in the past. And how we could feel more connected in this space and how we could do these things. And we'll continue to stay curious and live in that question. And there's still much work to do. It's a work in progress. And that's what's great about imagination. There's room to grow and evolve. I love the imagination because there's never a final answer. Which I guess makes probably some people not so happy. But for me, it works. Another use of the imagination is to see a goal we wish to have come about in our lives. Now, we've been talking about this a lot in the metaphysics class. Because the question is, once we've gotten clear about that we're not praying to God outside of us to fix something or to give us something, then what do we pray, or how does that work to bring forth something we desire? Well, this is where the power of imagination comes in. Say you'd like to have more money. That's something that most people get on board with. In the first phase of imagination, we don't need to go down the rabbit hole of how that's going to happen. Like, go with the how. That's a strategy. We want to focus on the end goal. And what things do we want to do with the additional money? Why do we want additional money? Maybe we want to travel. If you want to travel, see yourself traveling. See what that could look like. If maybe creating more stability for a loved one or for yourself. See those needs met beyond your wildest dreams. What would it feel like, smell like, taste like, sound like to have these goals met? You know, can you smell the smell of the beach if that's what you want your more money to do? Can you taste the pizza in Italy? I mean, what is it, right? Can you really make it real in you? Use your imagination. So don't be caught up in about how it's going to happen, because that's putting limits on how it could happen, right? If you're attached to it happening in a certain way. Maybe you'll get a raise. That's an easy way to have it. But maybe someone gives you their airline miles for your dream trip. Or maybe a loved one has an unanticipated windfall. I mean, your abundance can come from anywhere. And this can happen for anything that you're looking at wanting to bring forth in your life. These things happen, and they happen every day. Story upon story, from what we might consider a small blessing, but was a blessing nonetheless, to a big stuff can happen. So we have to get over how and just be focused on what. and let it be something even better. It's okay for the what to be even better than we dreamed, right? Yes. So when we stay focused on the goal and let it be bigger than when we imagined it, pathways open that we didn't even know about. Because the blinders, when we attach to it being a certain way, we have blinders, right? And we can only see this solution. But when we say, I'm just looking to get there, and I don't really care how I get there, I just want to get there, woo! The blinders are off. There's lots of different ways to get there. And another thing happens when we get clear about what we want is it becomes easier to see the things that are blocking us. What stories are we telling us that we can't do whatever it is that we want? How many times have I heard someone say they want to follow a dream of, say, being in the sciences, but at some point they bought the belief that they weren't good at math. You know, that's just a barrier. If you really want to do it, do it. Most people are better at math than they think they are. They just had a bad teacher along the way somewhere. Remove the barriers that are real or made up. You know, I have a friend who was working on going to school. You know, she's doing the community college thing, and she just really, really wanted to, you know, get to the end. But you know, there's that darn math class that one has to pass to get that darn college degree, right? And she struggled and struggled and struggled, and there's so much drama, oh my gosh, for years. And then she finally transferred to the university from the community college, and she got a different math teacher. And I'll tell you what, everything changed. She all of a sudden had a math teacher explain it in a way that she could understand it, and everything, and all of a sudden it wasn't a problem. Just like that. You know? And so when we think there's a barrier, there is. And when we stay open to the possibilities that there is something, if this is what it's mine to do, there is something beyond it, well, then there is. Whatever we believe is true. So, you know. So, these kind of things happen when we are open to things happening to us. The year before we moved here, I was looking at our budget, and I was like, you know, if we're going in the holiday time, and I, you know, maybe like to make some more money, but I really don't want to like get a whole full, like the whole seasonal job thing. It's too much. We have too much going on in our lives to really make that happen logistically. I still want to keep my Sundays open, at least some of them, for speaking and all this stuff. And so I stopped by a store owned by a friend. I was just going in to say hello, you know, just bopping around town. And I mentioned to her that I was looking for something because I knew that she had a different circle of friends than I did. So she might know something that I don't know about. She's like, you know, I've been looking for somebody to fill in a couple of days here at the store. What, you want to do it? I'm like, okay, sounds great. Because also her store was all, was a green themed store. So everything, so I really felt it was something I could believe in doing too, because I'm not at the point in my life where I feel like I can just do anything. I want to do something I believe in. And this was, and so it was all of those things all at once. It was excellent. It was flexible. It was relaxed. I was able to spend time, you know, doing craft things when it was slow. It was great. I just was open to the possibility of showing up, and she's the one who suggested to me that I work on becoming a substitute teacher, which became a more long-term solution to that. You just show up and say, hey, universe, I'm looking to do something, and it happens. It's not magic. It's the way it works when we open up. So, how do we use imagination and a vision to change our life for the good? Well, there's suggestions in the Pray Up Your Life book. We're still sort of using that. There's lots of good stuff in that book. And there's stuff in there about specifically about creating vision, and there's plenty of methods. And maybe you're not even sure what you want next. That's okay. But one popular thing to do is to create a vision board. Now, some of you probably heard about this, and even if you're not sure exactly, like you're like, Some of you might say, I really, really want this. And some of you be like, I don't know, I just want my life to be better, whatever that means. That's okay too. So with a vision board, you go through like magazines and stuff and you start pulling out, just rip out the pages of things that have pictures you like or words that are really sizzly to you or whatever it is. Just pull them all out and then start, smile. What makes you go, yes, ooh, I like that. You know, all the stuff. You know the feelings that you get when you get excited about something. And so then you start to go through that pile and say, okay, you want to stay balanced between deciding what's too big. You know, you don't want to go like, let your brain just tell you something's too big. And you also want to be clear about what's really calling you, because if you're so scattered, then you're not being really clear, right? So you want to be clear, but also open to something bigger. It's a balance thing. And if there's something you really, really want and you can't find a picture of it easy, just go Google it. Get a picture. So then there's another very important step. Add a picture of yourself so that you're seeing, when you're looking at this every day, this vision board, you're seeing yourself in that. And I tell you, the vision board is not the thing that has the power. It's the thing that helps you stay focused on what it is that you're looking for, whatever that is, right? But I'll tell you, a couple years ago, I had made a vision board at the New Year's Day get-together, and I included a picture of a polar bear, because, you know, I have a thing about polar bears, right? And now look where I live. We live in the land of the polar bears. Isn't that great? So, and I'm happy not to live exactly next to the polar bears, but like close enough to be, you know, yeah. I don't need polar bears in my backyard. So, isn't that interesting how that happens? So another angle to use our imagination is kind of to back into it in a way. This is the season of Lent. We've talked about that some. And so in Lent, we look at what habits and beliefs aren't working for us or are holding us back, are no longer something we want to have on our list of options of how we're doing life. So a couple weeks ago, right, Sue brought her baggage in here and we looked at all her baggage, right, and that was super fun. And if you didn't see that, you should go watch the video. So what does that have to do with our imagination, though? Well, we can use the power of visualization to see our lives, what our lives would look like without fear and guilt and shame and the precious story and all the other stuff, right? If we used our power of imagination to see what our lives could look like. What would my life look like without fear? What would my life look like without shame? Or to be bought down by old stories that make me believe something about myself that's really not true, deep in my core. So if we can see those things, if we can start to see them, then we can believe, hopefully, take the next step to believe that it's possible, right? And sometimes you just have to believe that it's possible, right? You have to kind of, maybe you can believe that it's possible, and sometimes you have to be like, okay, well, I'm willing to believe that maybe it's possible, right? And so you can work your way into it if it's really rough, but you all are experts, I'm sure. So once we can have the vision of our life free of fill in the blank, then we can use that as a lighthouse to continue to guide us where we want to go, right? So it's like, okay, I'm feeling stuck. Okay, wait, let me see higher. Let me see higher. You know, we are constantly using our imagination. So it's up to us how we use it. One way is to imagine what wonderful things we could do with our lives. Another is to worry about all the things we don't want to have happen. Those are both perfectly valid ways to use our imagination. But when we use our imagination to see the unlimited possibilities available to us, we can open ourselves to a wonder-filled life with unlimited blessings. So, go see it and believe.